Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. What a great day to be a New Yorker. Today, this morning, marks the day that New York makes history as we mark a true and significant win for our transit system, for our environment, and for our communities and the long-term livability of the New York region. Central Business District tolling is a transformative initiative that will support critical investments in our transit system, reduce pollution and emissions while improving air quality, increase mobility, and create safer streets for cyclists and pedestrians, bolster New York State's economy. I recognize that the Partnership for New York City estimated that the cost of congestion in New York City $20 billion a year, and simply improve the lives of all New Yorkers. Governor Cuomo deserves tremendous credit for getting this done. After decades of false starts and failed attempts, Governor Cuomo resurrected the plan and led the way to making it a reality this morning. It's an extraordinary accomplishment. I also want to thank our partners in the New York State Legislature, including Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Speaker Carl Hastie, as well as Chairman Kennedy, Chairman Comrie, Chairman Paulin, and Chairman Magdarelli, all of whom helped push this important initiative over the finish line. Thanks to their efforts, New York is taking a critical step towards providing nearly 9 million daily MTA customers with the modern, reliable, robust transit system they want and deserve, while creating tens of thousands, actually 57,000 if you're counting, which we are, across New York State. It will allow us to build on the progress we've made in the last year with a new team at the helm of the MTA. On-time performance is up, robust transit system, major delays are down, and our passengers are getting to their destinations quicker than before. As many of you know, a revenue target is included in this initiative, generating $15 billion of capital investment for the MTA from the Central Business District tolling alone. This will go a long way towards funding our upcoming 2020 to 24 capital plan for key capital investments in the MTA's infrastructure assets. That means necessary funding for state-of-the-art signals, new trains, subways and buses, 50 additional accessible subway stations, and the infrastructure that keeps New York moving. Better transit service is hardly the only benefit of congestion pricing, however. This initiative will also A, get cars off the road, B, reduce New York City's stifling and economically draining traffic congestion, C, improve air quality by dramatically reducing carbon emissions, and D, take concrete measurable steps towards combating the existential threat of climate change to the region and to our planet. Bottom line is we're talking about improved service for the millions of people who take subways, buses, and commuter rail every day. Make no mistake about it, this won't fix all our problems. We still have a rapidly aging system and growing structural deficits on the operating side. We still have to reduce our costs, increase our efficiency, and reform the MTA. And thankfully, we're in the process of making those much-needed changes. But despite all that, Central Business District tolling will deliver us a more economically friendly New York, a safer New York, a more reliable New York, an economically stronger New York, and a better New York for the 15 million people in the MTA service region. Once again, thanks to Governor Cuomo and the legislative leaders and all our partners who helped make this critical program a reality. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions, and I'm going to start with Michael Aronson, Michael.
The details, are they going to be coming from the CBTA or this commission, and how is this commission going to be established? And is it ultimately going to be up to the CBTA in deciding the exact dollar amount, any exemptions, and there's some exemptions for this law? Explain that.
Yeah, so you're referring to the Traffic Mobility Review Board, which is set forth in the statute. It's 6 members. They're required to have experience in transportation, transit, management, public finance. One will be designated by Mayor de Blasio. One will come from the Long Island Railroad area, one from Metro North, the 3 others appointed by TBTA. That group will be looking at the MTA's capital plan and the specific terms of the Central Business District tolling program and making recommendations to the MTA, Michael.
But ultimately, the CBTA and the MTA will decide, do they have to take the recommendations, or if they want to, if the fee is going to be set at a certain level, they can adjust it?
Well, recommendations, as the word suggests, are not mandatory. They'll be seriously considered. This is a a serious panel. As part of this process, there will be public hearings across the region, including in every borough, Long Island, and the Metro North area. It's got to be comparable to the MTA's public outreach process for a fare and toll increase.
And that will also include where, if any, exemptions beyond those ones within the law.
Yes, sir. Please.
Maybe it's the mobility review board that they're going to be clarifying all this
Right.
for the next year and a half. And I know this is an old figure from, Kathy Wild's group that they said, but the 1152, when you hear that figure, do you basically say, that's wildly awful, wildly wrong? Are we more or less in the ballpark of what the fee is going to be, the toll's going to be for cars? And the other thing is, I want to ask about.
Well, let me stop you on that and respond to that. My reaction to that is that will be that amount, whatever it is, exemptions, credits, if any, will be discussed by the Traffic Mobility Review Board. There will be public hearings, and recommendations will be made to the MTA Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority Board. I don't have a reaction. It would be presumptuous of me to guess and assume what a legislatively created group, which has not been comprised yet, is going to recommend. I can't do that.
And my other question was,
Yes.
Lincoln and Provincetown, we heard from the governor of New Jersey, probably on Friday, who was saying, wait a minute, this isn't fair. The folks on the GW Bridge, they don't get the same kind of.
So we responded to, I guess in a way, to the governor's comment and took all the exemptions out across the Hudson and across the East River. So that was responsive. Yes, sir.
Talking about West Side Highway exemption, which came through at the 11th hour last night, your revenue projection numbers were estimated before that exemption was factored in. So one, do your revenue projection numbers still hold up even though the West Side Highway is going to be exempt? And two, is there concerns that infrastructure costs in building all this stuff might be escalated because of the number of entrances?
So let me deal with the second question first. We held an industry day actually in these rooms. It was larger back in February with suppliers, vendors, and technology companies from all around the world and all around the nation. We're very focused on minimizing the cost of both operating the system and investing the capital to deploy it. We've been working with Polly Trottenberg and her colleagues at New York City DOT on exactly that for a long period of time. My first call when the governor announced on the radio that I was going to be nominated was to Polly Trottenberg, and I spoke to Polly and members of the de Blasio administration many times over the weekend. So we're very focused on reducing operating cost and reducing capital cost. I would expect, but again, the Traffic Review Mobility Board, it's a hard one to say, we'll be looking at that. I don't expect that the inclusion of the West Side Highway is going to have a material impact, because traffic going up north or south that goes into the Central Business District will be assessed whatever Central Business District tolling fee is established. Please.
Do we know how this is going to work for people who live within the zone, when they take their car out, drive within the zone, and they charge anything, or it's only when they enter and exit?
Well, clearly, everybody who enters the zone, one charge a day, including residents of Manhattan. For lower-income residents of, actually not Manhattan, right, the cordon, including 60th Street and South, with respect to low-income people, they will have a 60,000 or below. They will have the benefit from a refundable credit with respect to that. We will not be charging people who are moving their cars for alternate side of the street. Obviously, that's a very limited universe. It'll be the areas around 60th Street, both on the east side and the west side.
But
Please.
If you take, let's say, keep your car in a garage, you take it out to drive, for 50th to ride that guy, you're still within the zone. You're not charged anything because you haven't sort of crossed.
That decision will be up to the Traffic Review Mobility Board as it does its work. Andrew.
Two questions.
Sure.
First, under the rosiest scenario where congestion pricing produces the $15 billion, and with the other sources, real estate taxes, internet, et cetera, if you get up to $25 billion, that's still far short of what Andy Blackford said he needs to
So-
modernize the subway. So where do you get the rest of the money?
So that's a good question. Not the case. I'll note a couple of things. One is it's not 25, it's actually 32, and here's how you get to 32. In the existing 2015 capital plan, we assumed and are in the process of receiving about $7 billion from the federal government. Our assumption is that we will receive in the new capital plan a similar amount. Many of those programs are grant programs for large capital projects. Some of it's formula funding. I think that's a reasonable assumption, point one. Point two, at this point in the capital plan, which isn't going to be introduced to the public until October of this year, we are so far ahead of the process before in the current capital plans development and in capital plans beyond that. In addition to that, we expect that there will be additional funding sources to be announced, including perhaps additional funds from the state and the city. We're still in the process of developing that. But having $32 billion in the bank, if you will, on a capital plan that won't begin until January of 2020 and won't be disclosed to the public, it's in development, and to be at the $32 billion level is, frankly, an extraordinary achievement. And I think it's really, it's almost hard to overstate the importance of what happened in Albany early this morning. Getting congestion pricing after fits and starts and, frankly, years and over a decade of failure. Incredible achievement by the governor and legislative leaders. The additional revenue sources get us to 25, plus 7 is 32, and that's within, clearly within striking distance of the amount required for a new capital plan.
Just as a second question.
I think it's the third, but go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay.
On your confirmation happening at 2 o'clock in the morning, does that send the wrong message in terms of the MTA's new commitment to transit?
Well, look, I was asked to come to Albany for hearings of the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Transportation Committee. I think that occurred 5 or 6 o'clock or something like that, p.m. It was live stream. I think a number of you covered it. I was not in the chamber at 2 o'clock in the morning because I'd asked the legislative leaders if it was okay if I could return. I specifically asked that I wanted to appear physically. I didn't want to appear on social media or Instagram or whatever. So I asked to appear. They granted that request, and obviously, as I understand it, there's a tape on the Senate website as to the hearing last night. I thought that Senator Kennedy and Comrie and Senator Kruger, the chairs of those respective committees, and their colleagues were, as they say in the law business, kind of a hot bench last night and asked a lot of tough questions. I've spent a lot of time, frankly, budget hearings in Albany, hearings before the Transportation and Authorities Committee, both in Albany and down here. I expect to be doing that, going forward. I also expect to be appearing with Ronnie Haycom and other colleagues before the City Council, so I don't subscribe to that theory at all. Please.
The governor himself has said about your new job, who would want it? So why did you take it?
Here's why I took it. I grew up in this town. I've been riding the subways since I was an infant. The challenge, there's no bigger challenge or opportunity. I think it's frankly the same thing that attracted Andy Byford after stops in such minor cities as London and Toronto and Melbourne to New York. And if you can do it in New York, you can do it anywhere. Luckily for me, I didn't have to travel across an ocean to do that. No, look, there's nothing more important than the subways and buses and Long Island Railroad and Metro North in New York. I've been riding a system since I was literally a child. Favorite stations, nobody asked, 74th Street and Roosevelt Avenue, which is where you get on the 7 train to go to what used to be Shea Stadium, and there's no larger challenge. And I'm excited by the opportunity. I'm honored by the governor asking me to do this, and my colleagues and I, which is largely a new team, are excited about it. There's no question in my mind that with funding on this level and with the support of the state and the city and the team here, that we're going to look, on-time performance on the subways is up. Andy Byford and I and Ronnie Haycom have announced that the last 2 or 3 weeks. Major incidents are down. Andy's got additional operating steps that he is considering, and he's an extraordinarily talented person. The same is true of Phil Eng and Kathy Rinaldi and Danny, who's back in the room. In the back of the room, and I think we've got an extraordinarily talented team, and we're committed to delivering for New York. Please.
You've been credited with reforming the FOIL process at Port Authority. Do you plan to do anything similar like that at the MTA?
Yeah, I do. I'm not happy with the FOIL process here, A. B, blessedly, I haven't been involved in it. I guess I don't have a choice now, and I understand that there are members of the press that are unhappy with the pace of response, and I'm going to look into it. We can do better, and we need to do better. Please.
Foye, I wanted to get your comments on MTA reform. Some folks are a little concerned that, that the MTA needs to put together a reform proposal by June. They think that's a little too soon and kind of an arbitrary date. And other folks are worried that, creating these new boards to review projects and things like that kind of overly complicates and does more to obscure transparency than, help it. What do you make of those concerns?
I don't agree with any of it. First, the report that is due by June 30, we've been working on and for some time. Point one, the Traffic Mobility Review Board is an advisory group that will make recommendations and conduct public hearings. I think that's a healthy part of the process, and this is going to be comparable to what the MTA does on a toll and fare hearing. People will be able to attend in public. They'll be able to watch videos, send in comments by email, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's all good and healthy. I don't subscribe to that theory at all. Yes, sir.
Is there any money in the plan for infrastructure improvements for places that are going to become hellacious bottlenecks? 79th Street southbound off of the West Side Highway comes to mind. It's out of the zone. People are going to jump off, park at 63, 4, 5. Any plan for improvements on that sort of exit? Is there going to be?
Yeah, our team is very focused on it. We're working closely with the city. The city and the MTA are going to be working to address those issues: parking, placards, et cetera. And we've also, I'll note, got a period of time that's well over 18 months before the Central Business District tolling program starts, no earlier than January 1st, 2020. I think that's sufficient time to deal with those important issues. Please.
What's the rationale behind having the mayor appoint only one or designate only one member of that six-member board or commission, since congestion pricing will clearly have an outsized impact on the 5 boroughs in New York City? I mean, it seems like a lot of people are interpreting the structure of the commission as the city of New York losing or essentially turning over authority over its streets to the state.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there are provisions in the bill that was passed early this morning about an MOU between New York City Department of Transportation and Tri-Boroughs Bridge and Tunnel Authority. We're extraordinarily. First of all, that work has begun with Commissioner Trottenberg and her team. The relationship between MTA and New York City Department of Transportation is extraordinary. I think Commissioner Trottenberg is now one of my board colleagues, and I think she's an extraordinarily gifted public servant. And the provisions of the MOU, A, B, the regard that we hold her and her department, and C, the respect we have for the city's sovereignty and ownership of the streets. And our interest, TB&T's interest, is going to be, how can we expeditiously, at the least cost and with least disruption to customers, install this infrastructure that's required, which, as I said, there was an industry day in this room back in February, and to do it at least cost and must, and I'm confident we can do that. Yes, sir.
Timing-wise.
Yep.
Sooner than November 31st, 2020.
Yeah.
How confident are you that the board will be able to have all its hearings, all its studies, all the reports done, make its recommendations, approve or reject it, rinse, wash, repeat if necessary, and then also get all of that infrastructure, whether it be EPA, whatever, all throughout, and have it done as close as possible to that time?
I'm absolutely confident that can be done. We've been working on it for some time. We have studied what's gone on in London and Stockholm and Gothenburg and other places. The technology has only improved since then and gotten more efficient, smaller, and cheaper. I would expect, I'm not going to give you a date, but I would expect that the members of the Traffic Mobility review board will be named expeditiously. I'm not going to give you a day or a week. It would be inappropriate for me to do that. But can we meet that? Absolutely. Yeah, please.
Will commuters, motorists, residents, if you're going to have to purchase separately or invest in an easy pass or anything additional to make sure that they're told getting sure they're
Well, look, Easy Pass, let me answer that question this way. Easy Pass penetration on MTA bridges and tunnels is about 95%, which means that 95% of our customers already have a Easy Pass. I'm not going to say everyone in Manhattan that has a car has got an Easy Pass. I think if they don't, there's probably lots of good reason as the central business tolling program proceeds to get an Easy Pass. I don't expect that'll be a problem. Given the fact that this is a revenue opportunity and a capital opportunity, I can assure you that we'll assist and make as easy as possible getting an Easy Pass for those who don't have one. Please.
Regarding the new L train plan,
Yeah.
first it was up to the board, the governor said, to decide if the new plan was implemented. Then it was a third party that would review the plan, and now it's a third party to check the safety on site. President Byford said he'll do due diligence on the plan and won't be steamrolled into accepting it, but that seems to be what happened.
No, I don't.
Have done its due diligence for this plan?
Yeah, no, I think so. Look, I think the Columbia and Cornell deans and professors did an extraordinary public service. As I noted to the Senate, I guess, Finance Committee last night, I'm not an engineer, but I do believe strongly in the benefits for a couple of 100,000 commuters of the new L train plan. A consulting firm was approved by the MTA board, I guess, in this room on Wednesday. That firm was, or Monday, Wednesday. That firm was selected by 3 members, Acting Chair Ferrer, I guess former Acting Chair Ferrer, now Commissioner Ferrer, Scott Reckler, who was on the board at the time, and Commissioner Trottenberg. The recommendation, as I understand it, was unanimous, and the scope is not only safety, but goes to operations, handover after construction, environmental issues, and the like. And I think that the protections that are put in place, and by the way, the deans from Columbia and Cornell in their report recommended an independent firm, and that's exactly what we've got. Please.
Speaking of that question, my colleague reported that there was supposed to be an independent assessment comparing the governor's new plan to the L train to the initial plan, and that's not happening, but also that the MTA is denying that that was never the case in the first place. Can you speak to that, or is there any sort of independent assessment coming up to compare those two?
Well, look, I think there have been a series of independent assessments, right? The Columbia and Cornell deans made their recommendation, which, look, I think the old L train plan represented a colossal collective failure of imagination because it provided for building, as the Daily News editorial pages noted with respect to the L train and Gateway, if I'm characterizing it properly, building a 1915 tunnel today, replacing a 1950 tunnel doesn't really make a lot of sense. The governor, in what I thought was a wonderful turn of phrase, right, took General Eisenhower's military-industrial complex phrase from the 50s and turned it into what I believe exists, but never really thought about it as a phrase, a transportation-industrial complex. I think that complex is real. I think the collective, colossal failure of imagination included the 3 firms, which are large, international, publicly traded firms. I think that the industry and the MTA have got to do better. An independent firm was selected by the board last week. I think its scope is clear, consistent with what's been described, and I think the L train project's in a good place, and in my mind, and I think in the mind of my colleagues and probably 200,000 commuters, the right execution for that project.
Governor Cuomo talked about M&A.
Michael, I gave you the first question. Okay, all right, got it.
Governor Cuomo talks about the M&M, money management.
Yeah.
So you may have the money now. You say your management report is coming out. Behind you are all the component companies listed. Mr. Cuomo said, why do we have 5 different companies? At what level of reform are you looking at? I mean, could you combine the railroads? Could you combine, all of these things we've been talking about for years and years, and many, many reform plans have been done, and the bureaucracy builds. What is your goal for your reform plan? How deep are you going to go, and what are you empowered to do by the legislature or just internally?
Well, look, start with this. The MTA is in dire financial situation. That's not just the management's judgment, it's also the judgment of the controller of the state of New York. It's also the judgment of rating agencies which have downgraded us. The organization needs to do better. I told the senators in Albany last night that the harsh truth is that we've lost credibility with our customers, many of them, and with our funders in both Albany and City Hall. The short answer to your question is everything is on the table. Should we have 3 or 4 procurement departments? I don't think so. Should we have 3 or 4 legal departments? I don't think so. One could ask that question about many things. Bob Foran is CFO of the MTA, is an unsung hero. He's taking $2 billion out of expense on an annual recurring basis. If you do the math that he does in terms of what that means for borrowing capacity and multiply it by a 14.5 or 15, it's an extraordinary number. This is a guy who worked on Wall Street and made lots of money, and I think the best public agency chief financial officer in the country. My judgment. I think everything's got to be on the table. Everything is on the table. And I look forward to reporting to the public, the board, and the media in the weeks and months ahead about the steps that we're going to take to fix this. Thanks, Will. Oh yeah. Sorry, just breaking news. So I didn't bring my wallet with me, but the question was asked at a board meeting last week, or someone made an assertion, none of you all take MTA services. Not true, and actually we're going to do a slide the next time it comes up, and it's going to, so I take the subway every day. I've got a monthly in my pocket from Port Washington, $261 a month. I pay for it myself. I've been riding, as I said at the beginning, the subways and buses and the Long Island forever, and the Long Island Railroad since 1989 or something like that. That's true of almost everybody else on the board, and we're not happy with service either. I'm not happy as the chairman and CEO of the MTA. I'm not happy as a customer. Happily, it's getting better. It's got a long way to go, but Max asked me to remind you of that, so I've done that. Thanks all.